Alrighty guys, welcome to something a little bit different. So going to be actually making a synergy guide for Legion TD on version 3.44i. So this is just the introduction here and we'll jump into it in a second. Hopefully my sort of video editing picks up, because otherwise you're going to see a whole bunch of badly cut together frames. I apologize for that in advance. I'm just going to zoom out. Anyway, stay tuned. We'll be going through all the sort of synergy aspects, both within your role and within the team. So yeah, stay tuned, pay attention. Hopefully you enjoy it and hopefully you learn something. Thank you very much. Alrighty, the first sort of setup I want to talk about is the AoE setup. So as you can see here, got elite archers. I think, as we all know, elite archers good unit. They got the multi-shot ability, so this gives them AoE. So they hit 5 targets at once. Here we've got the parrots. They've got the echo, which reflects the damage they take. So they also synergize, doing more AoE. And in general, when you have AoE on your line, it's pretty useless to have a whole bunch of AoE and then go, ooh, I'm going to build a unit with, as it's going, I'm going to build a unit with 94 to 108 damage that's going to one-shot everything. Well, that's pretty useless, isn't it? Because you're doing AoE, it's going to kill creeps that are already low health, and you'll just be wasting heaps of damage. So when you have AoE on your lane, you generally want to build more AoE, and that's how you can hold with lower value. So, okay, so spawning level 5, I actually changed up the positioning a little bit from what you would have seen earlier, because it worked better. Got one parrot right at the front to pull the creeps to the wall, and then the second parrot runs forwards now, pardon. As you can see, the EAs are sharing the damage a little bit, with the AoE from the parrot helping. So looking pretty good at the moment. I want to reiterate, this is in no way a particularly consistent hold, certainly down to luck, but 460 value, and I have 120 health, 2 elite archers alive. So, moving on to the second part of this synergy guide, we're going to talk about single target damage. Nice example is just Mudman on level 3. It's a one hitter, it's tanky. It's just nice single target damage unit for early in the game that doesn't really have any particular weakness on the first 3 levels. So it's a really good add for units like Ig, Sea Giant, these sorts of things. Okay, so this 390 Mudman should even do relatively well versus a Furbolg. As you can see, 3 Mudmen, absolutely no problems whatsoever, versus a Furbolg, which is beautiful. So anyway, cheers very much. However, moving on to level 4, these increments from the Mudmen aren't nearly as good, so let's just see what happens if we start level 4 with just these Mudmen. You can see they missed the one shot by about 15 odd damage. Obviously depends on the damage rolls, not the best focus either, but you can see they have absolutely no chance of holding level. So the next sort of term I want to talk about is the term of damage increments. Okay, so on level 3, Mudman has a good increment because it's able to one shot. On level 4, however, it leaves the creeps with around about 15 health, okay? So that means the increment's actually rather bad, and 3 Mudman will leak probably about a third of the wave level 4, if not more. So we need to add a little bit of value. What we're going to do, we're going to pop down a Raider, okay? And what he does is the swing from the Raider, plus the swing from the Mudman, will one-shot a creep on level 4, and 2 swings from the Wolf, plus a swing from the Mudman, will also one-shot. So the Mudman has a bad damage increment, but the Raider will be able to fix that. You can see going on. Obviously the Raider's a lot squishy, we don't want him tanking. And you see the Raider and the Mudman starting to work together to get these one-shots in, which is really important. Now he's decided to suicide, which is a bit unlucky. But you can see the dog is still alive. And dog hit, Mudman hit, dog hit. And with the dog's faster attack speed, it's actually beautiful synergy with this Mudman here. Not making it swing twice on each creep, because it has a really low attack speed, doesn't like doing that. So anyway, that shows you just how we can use our tower knowledge to fix our damage increments on certain levels. So what we're going to do is have a look at 2 blasters just by themselves on level 5. Just got the extra value here so I don't get ganked from behind, that's no fun. Blood Orc Commander, so you can assume they haven't scouted your blaster yet. We're going to see if we're able to hold. My expectation is not at all. So we're not doing too badly for sure. We had okay aggro, but with the overclock gone, we're going to leak a creep and the 2 sends. Not too bad honestly, but not what you want from your 800 value lane on level 5. So another example of damage increment would be Blaster. It's a unit with a terrible damage increment because it doesn't one-shot level 5 through a Ferb, and it doesn't two-shot level 7 through a Ferb. However, we can fix that increment with something like a Captain, gives it 7% extra damage. And let's see how we go versus Send. Should be a Blood Orc and a Commander, yes indeed. So no Ferb, because it still won't one-shot 5 through Ferb. With this Captain. So Captain actually runs in front, gets sniped by the Blood Orc, but it doesn't matter because we're one-shotting so many of these creeps for such a long time that you can see our hold is insane. We have 2300 health worth of Blaster in mid, and that's a good way to fix your increment with Blaster. Captain Blaster is super good. So moving on to the next part of the synergy guide, we're going to talk about damage types, armor types, and some of the weaknesses on your lane, okay? So for example, we've got Revenants here. We've got magic damage, we've got light armor, okay? So we're a little bit weak on Pierce Waves. However, the only Pierce Wave early game is level 1, where Revenants are okay, and level 4, where the magic damage is very, very strong, alright? So our armor type isn't actually a weakness. What is a big weakness is this magic damage, okay? It makes these units very, very weak on level 3. Makes them very, very weak on level 6 and level 8 as well, alright? So this is why Revenants early game are quite bad. We're just going to see how we do level 3 against a Blood Orc. $520 value Revenant, so this would be a 2-0 Revenant. It's the best placement I can do with the Acolyte blocker in front. But even so, stuck Blood Orc, which you'd be pretty happy to have. Without a doubt, I'd say this is going relatively well for you. Or for me rather. Spawnall is on, but even so I haven't got a chance in hell of even clearing versus a Blood Orc. So, level 3, weak wave for Revenant. So what do you do about that? Well, let's have a look. So here's an example of a build you may well pull off in the early game. You start out with some Corrupted Ents, because they're very, very strong on the first few levels. Then you start to build your relevant value, okay? Your non-dead value, a little bit later on. So let's see how we go versus a Blood Orc on level 3 this time. Keep in mind, we have 440 value instead of 520 value on this line. Let's see how we do. Same send. Positioning that I would be happy with if I was playing this myself in a real game. But we have 80 less value than our attempt last time, where we couldn't even clear. So you can see this time, we have 3-0, and we're able to clear everything, and even knock this Blood Orc down to half health. So that's really, really good. that simulates your 3-0 start with 5 Ents into a Revenant for 2. Revenant very strong on level 2, as it happens, because of a damage increment. 2 shots, okay? So that's how you can use your roll, okay, to help cover your weak waves by just using the damage and armor types. This thing has perfect damage and armor type for wave 3, so we use that, okay, to cover the weakness of our Revenant on level 3, and we use our Revenant to cover the great weakness of this unit on level 5, where it has a terrible damage type versus light armor and a terrible armor type versus magic damage, okay? So that's just an example of a really, really basic mix that you can use to cover your weak waves just by using your damage and armor types, not even by using particularly strong units, because neither of these are all that wonderful in the early game. So moving on, we're going to be talking about melee units and ranged units, okay? I suppose it sort of makes sense to just build your melee units in front, because they need to walk forwards to attack anyway, but that's not always the correct thing to do in this game, alright? So sometimes you actually want to share damage between your melee and your ranged units. So what we've got here is a setup with 6 sprites and 1 polar bear. This is 610 value on level 5 against no send. So with the polar in front, let's see how he does. It's a tanky unit, right? So he's going to walk in front and tank like he should, and we'll see how we go. You can see this sprite here and this sprite here are tanking a little bit, then the pole is tanking the rest of the damage. So are we able to hold? We'll find out. Now I've got 3 sprites left against probably about a third of the wave. But as you can see, we're going to leak 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 birds. So not terrible, but not the result you want from 610 value. Let's see if we can improve on that. Okay, now we're going to retry level 5 with the polar behind. And we've moved this sprite from here to here, because with a melee unit behind, I don't want a ranged walk log up here, because otherwise it will just get sniped. And with the melee unit behind, I actually want even share damage, okay? So I'm trying to optimize the positioning for both. So let's get going and see how it goes. So we've got 610 value, same setup, just slightly different positioning. So you can see the sprites run forward, and 1, 2, 3, 4, even 5, and the polar are all taking some damage. This sprite on the wall here is going to die, and now this polar is going to tank most of the creeps that are moving around this side. So remember, we leaked 5 creeps with 610 value last time. Let's see how we're looking. And this time, we're going to have 2 sprites holding, okay? So that's how you can use your positioning with melee units and ranged units, alright, to share damage better, not just blindly putting a melee unit in front because it's melee. You actually use it for the strengths of the unit, not just as a tank, alright? You share the damage and you can get better results. So moving on, the next part of the synergy guide. What I want you guys to be thinking about is, what is the point of my unit? Why have I built it? What is its role in my lane? Is it a damage dealer? Is it a tank? Is it sort of half and half, meant to tank some damage, deal some damage? And keep in mind, these roles can change from level to level, okay? So I've got 1 Night Saber and 1 Sentry. So, is there a tank? Is there a damage dealer? Okay, I want you guys to have a think about that, and then we'll talk about it more after we watch how we go versus a Furbolg. So here we've got the Furb coming in. We've got the Night Saber positioned in front, and the Furbolg immediately goes on the Night Saber. So as you can see, we're leaking a significant amount. Not good. So let's have a little discussion about what just happened, okay? for level 2, you've got your Nightsaber, which is your DPS unit, alright? With its bounce, you need that thing to stay alive as long as possible, alright? Your Sentry, it's pretty bloody expendable. It's a nice little bit of added damage, but it's not important at all on level 2, alright? As I'll just pause the timer, it's not quite ready. It's really not important for level 2, okay? So you want to protect your Nightsaber. If it gets attacked by a Furb early on, you're going to leak a very, very, very large number of creeps, alright? This, you don't have necessarily the potential of a Furb getting stuck and going around hitting the Sentry, but you will never leak half to 3/4 of the wave. The other thing I want to say specifically with this build, or Moa is going to kill me, build tier 1, okay? You want 2 tier 1s with your Sentry, alright? You want one in front to block the Blood Orc on level 3, okay? And you want just one somewhere else. Behind is good because it's a cult and cults suck. So let's see how we go. Alright, same setup this time. We've added the tier 1s, okay? Because we've seen a Sentry is not enough tanking for our DPS. So you add more tanks, okay? Cheap tanks. See this time how we're able to go. So the cults tank and die. The Sentry's now tanked. Okay, it's tanking the Furb as well. It's going to die. And now let's watch this Saber go. So as you can see, by protecting our DPS, this Furb wasn't stuck at all, but by protecting our DPS, we're able to leak just a Furbolg, which is not a bad result on level 2, okay? So just by thinking about what roles our units play, we've got our DPS, we've got our tank that also does some damage, and then we just get 2 tanks, okay? It's 180 HP of tank. That's all it is. That'll stop a fast Furbolg from hitting our medium army units, alright? So, we understand the roles that our units play, their strengths and their weaknesses, okay? And we can look to cover their weaknesses on certain levels just by either changing around the positioning with the Saber in the back, and when that's not even enough, okay, because of this unit's somewhat weakness to a Furbolg on level 2, we add just a bit more value, okay, of blocker to keep it alive even longer so it can do all the damage we need. Okay, so now we're going to more specifically talk about the use of blockers, alright? As you can see, I've got 2 Hades on my lane, which might give you a clue as to what we're talking about. So, we saw how our blockers worked just earlier with the Sentry, okay, and the Nightsaber. We used 2 tier 1s as blockers. So generally you have blockers for 2 things. You have blockers for Blood Orcs on level 2 and 3, okay, where you just get the tier 1 in front, so the Blood Orc has to attack that, and it stops a fast Blood Orc just immediately running to your line and just annihilating your units, okay? This is especially used with units like Aqua, Archer, and Sentry, okay, are the 3 that really come to mind. Most other units you don't really build it so much, okay, but Aqua, Archer, Sentry, and then Disciple as well, okay? Those are the units you really use it for early in the game. The other time you use it is for level 10. So let's try it right now. Oop. Without a blocker. Okay, 2 Hades, solo on level 10. And let's see how we go. Against no Send, of course, because Send actually tends to not show this quite so well. So we'll see if we get the result or not. So this Hades immediately gets attacked by the first boss, okay? Which is not what you want at all. This Hades is down to 300 health. Alright? Even though it was able to kill the boss and it's kind of efficient. Wow, that's perfect actually. Okay, we're going to have to do this one again. Two Hades, no other value, no other adds. Let's see how we go against level 10 here. So you can see the Hades actually getting focused down very aggressively, right? Even despite the summons, and one Hades gets sniped. And that is a whole lot of your damage. This 70 to 80 chaos is super important. It's a whole lot of your damage just gone. And that means the Diabolic also either got killed or despawned, alright? And you actually end up leaking to no Send. Okay, so I've made one change. I've added a carrion spitter, okay, just a little spider, in front of my 2 Hades on level 10, okay? And let's see what this does. So watching this spider, runs forwards, attacks, and it gets killed in one hit. But the thing is, that's completely fine, because now my important damage dealers, these Hades here, are safe and untouched, alright? They don't take damage early, they don't get sniped. That's exactly what you want to see. Right? Now it's 2 Hades and a Diabolic versus the 1 boss. Relatively good aggro in terms of HP. And we're able to hold. Okay? So now we're going to have a look at 2 Elite Archers solo, so this would be a 4-0 Elite Archer, against a Blood Orc on level 3. So we'll see how we go. Blood Orc is somewhat stuck, but still moving relatively quickly, and gets in on this first Elite Archer. Let's see how we do. Now it's on the second EA. We've leaked. It's hard to tell, maybe 12 odd creeps. Not so good. So now we're going to talk about the other usage of a blocker, okay? And this is for earlier in the game, specifically against Blood Orcs. So we've got 1 Spectre in front, and we've got these 2 Elite Archers, Blood Orcs and incoming. Let's see how we go. Got that Blood Orc, hopefully that's not too much. And so just watch this Blood Orc. Tries to attack the Spectre, it can't, and it gets shuffled to the back because it wastes time with the attack. Now it hits this backmost archer, which is exactly what you want. As you can see, I'll be able to completely clear my lane and even knock this Blood Orc down to about half health just before my army of blockers comes in. Okay, next on the list we're going to be talking about dead value versus like strong value or relevant value, and then about bridging units as well, okay? So I've had a spawn from my first reroll, I've changed my builder into Darkman. You can see I was rolling through profits a little bit. So let's say I found Time Stealer now, okay? So this spawn is dead value in the mid game, okay? It doesn't have really another strong level after the first 3, and then it's not too bad on 7, okay? So it's a pretty crap unit overall. It has its uses early, but mid-game it's dead value. This unit, Time Stealer, okay, is super good. Early 15 rather, okay? It's one of the best units for level 15. But playing it early, it sucks on 1, it sucks on 2, it's okay on 3, but it's weak to sends on 5 and 7, and it's not even very good 10, okay? So you can die with this unit super early on, alright? If you don't play it super well. But you start level 1 with spawn, okay? You start level 1 with spawn, you're completely fine on level 1, okay? Level 2, you don't even need to build, you will clear versus Ferb. If you're unlucky, you'll leak 4 or 5 creeps, not a massive deal. You get a Time Stealer on 1, okay? On level 3, pardon. This will hold versus send. Second Time Stealer, 5, 6, 7. So let's test a level 7 send with this build. So what we've got now is a build for level 7, okay? And we're going to see how we go against Ferb Hermit. And we'll test this against just 5 Time Stealers, alright? And we'll see how we do. So you can see the spawn is staying in front and tanking, which is exactly what you want from it. And against Ferb Hermit, we're going to have 3 Time Stealers in mid, which is not all that bad really when you think about it. So now we're going to test a raw 5 Time Stealers, 45 less value than our spawn build against Ferb Hermit. Let's see how we do.
At your call. I am not afraid. Someone call for the doctor.
So against just a Ferb Hermit, looks like we're going to have 1 Time Stealer in mid. Okay. Considering we get one more wisp, we get 2 less time stealers in mid, and this one's barely alive. Alright, so we are able to hold, but I think it's fair to say, not the best result. So what we do is we use our spawn, okay, as a bridging unit. It bridges level 1 and 2, which are significant weaknesses of the time stealer. It also helps it out on level 7, okay, and you spend 265 gold, okay, to make your 7 hold better, to make your level 1 and 2 genuinely strong, okay, and then you can build this full relevant value, okay. You use a bridging 265 value to cover your weaknesses levels 1 to 7, alright, so you can then build fully relevant value, and you don't need any more dead value, but you use that so you don't just become a dead lane if you get a send on level 1 or 2 like you would with Time Stealer, and it improves your 7 hold, okay? So that's one example of a bridging unit to get to minimize your dead value, alright, in order to get your strong value into mid game in a strong position, alright, which is what you want to do with every single role you get that has good units. So as another example of bridging units, we're going to talk about, say, this line that we've got here, okay? So, started with Revenant, Warlock, Helicopter, Flying Machine, and Harlot, okay? We re-rolled into Luster and Magnetor a lot later, okay? How do you think we got this roll? This is a 2010 value of blocker, so just ignore all that. We've got a 38, 40 value, okay? How do you think we got all this value through the early game? Alright, the way we got it through the early game is by playing 4 harlots, okay? A greedy freehold, because we've got a carry roll with Revenant, Warlock, and Helicopter, okay? But we can't play Revenants, Warlocks, and Helicopters from level 1 to 7, or 1 to 8 even, and expect to come out of the game with a reasonable amount of value. It's just completely unrealistic, okay? Because Revenant is just a really shitty YOLO that tends to die about 90% of the time if it's not a clog game, okay? Warlocks, you can't YOLO them. Flying Machine, it's just too weak on to early sends realistically. So it's just not going to fly, okay? So we use our harlots as a bridging unit, okay? Even though they're completely dead value and we want as much relevant value on our lane as possible every game, we can use these harlots as a bridging unit, okay? If we could play without them, we would play without them, alright? Because they're not relevant value in the mid game, and the mid game is what's important, right? Especially level 15. But we can't play without them if our role is Harlot, Revenant, Warlock, and Flying Machine, right? And let's assume, I don't know, Seer of Darkness and Null or Landmine, right? We need to use the harlots to bridge out of early game, okay, to give ourselves a strong base in the mid game. As you remember on the tier list, harlots are an A tier early game unit, alright? Their only weak level is 8, which we're able to cover with a helicopter and some warlocks and a whole bunch of value. And the value we get from free holding level 7 with 4 harlots and like a Revenant or something, right? So, and now let's see how we go versus level 15. Should be Demon, Kraken, Behemoth, and a couple of Warlocks. We're actually going to have these trees moving in, I think. Oh no, they just don't aggro. That'll be fine. Had to turn spawnall off because I'm not waiting 10 minutes to send 4 demons. It's just a bit of a pain. So yeah, 3,200 send. Good value. We'll see how we go. And we're able to clear, right? It's not the best result in the world, but realistically it's not too bad. And you got to remember that without all the spawns on, the creeps don't clog nearly as much, so they'll be far more aggressive and you're much harder to hold, okay? This is a setup I would think has a pretty good chance of holding 15 in most games, right? We delete that 38-40 value, most of it pretty strong on 15, okay? So we can use units like Harlot, right? Units like Spawn, strong early game units to bridge our strong units out of the early game and into the mid game where they're a lot better, okay? It's really important to keep in mind. We would love to just build fully relevant value, but sometimes that's not an option because a lot of instances of relevant value just suck in the early game, and that's how it is. So we need to be able to get them out of the early game in a decent shape with decent value income, because it doesn't matter if you have Hydra, Necro, Revenant, Warlock, Flying Machine, and like, you know, the most amazing anti-15 roll. If you're coming out into level 11 with 80 income and 1100 value, you're never ever going to hold 15, okay? So if you don't have a good start, a good early game, then you're just never going to be a relevant lane, okay? It just won't happen in the mid game. So you need to use these, a lot of the time you'll need to use these bridging units, no? Make yourself strong in the early game and play your role out into the mid game where you can use your strong mid game units. Does that make sense? Beautiful. Alrighty, I'd like to thank you guys very much for watching this synergy guide. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you sort of learned something, picked up even a couple of the points, and hopefully it made sense. If you've got any questions or further comments, anything like that, obviously you've got a comment section below. You can also email, which is in the description, or just shoot me a message on Discord, also in the description. So yeah, thank you very much. Stay tuned for part 2, which will be coming hopefully relatively soon. I've got to finish it off, which will be all about synergy within your team. Yeah, so cheers very much. Like, subscribe, all that if you enjoyed it. Dislike if you didn't, etc, etc. And I'll catch you next time.